how did your vision, your own vision of what this might be for the legal world change, if it did, over time as you made discoveries, both in the science, I guess, of AI and also in the psychology of what it was the market might actually pay for?
It was very organic, I think, because when we launched ClearBrief, we started by focusing on solo and small firms. That's like been kind of like the DNA of who we serve. Very quickly, we would get substantive feedback from those users. So as the product leader, it's my job to kind of filter the comments that I hear back because we can't serve everybody. We can't serve every single user in the world and every single practice area. But I had a really strong gut sense of like who we wanted to serve, which we starting by focusing on litigators. Then I would do as much work as I could to ensure I got qualitative feedback from our early users. And they were so generous with their time and they really did, make a huge impact on the product. You need that user feedback early on so that you can like iterate and, figure out the solution that people like, not only the solution that they want, but that they will use because it's easy enough to use.
Yes.
Welcome to the Renegade Lawyer Podcast, the show where we ask the questions, why aren't more lawyers living flourishing lives and inspiring others? And can you really get wealthy while doing only the work you love with people you like? Many lawyers are. Get ready to hear from your host, Ben Glass, the founder of the law firm Ben Glass Law in Fairfax, Virginia, and Great Legal Marketing, an organization that helps good people succeed by coaching, inspiring, and supporting law firm owners. Join us for today's conversation.
Hey everyone, this is Ben Glass. Welcome back to the Renegade Lawyer Podcast, where I get to interview people inside and outside the legal profession who are making a ding in the world. And today I have a great guest, Jackie Schafer. Jackie stands with feet firmly planted in both sides, both inside and outside. She is an attorney, former litigator, but we're here to talk about AI. We're here to talk about ClearBrief.ai. But Jackie's the founder and the CEO of this company that's making big waves as we're recording this in the summer of 2023, when AI is on about every headline, Jackie, talking about legal. And there's people that are highly fearful. There's people that are making idiots of themselves, and there's people that are really leveraging it, right, to do well for themselves and for their clients. So I wanted to get you on. So let me just start here, though, because I want to talk about your backstory. You are a founder, a CEO. At some point, you had an idea. You brought the idea to the world bravely. I'm sure you have learned things. Before we went live, we were talking a little bit about learning, marketing, and things you never had to do, probably as a younger litigator. So welcome, and tell us a little bit about your backstory, how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Ben. So as you mentioned, I'm a career litigator. I had started out in big law at Paul Weiss. I started my career there, where obviously there's such a huge emphasis on, research and writing and, working as part of a massive team on these really, high profile super stressful cases. But I had always kind of been sort of like public service minded. And I ended up joining government service as an assistant attorney general in Alaska and Washington State. So I've, briefed and argued, tons of cases before the state Supreme Courts. I've written attorney general opinions. And in government service, right, like legal writing is not so much as a team sport. It's something that you're kind of on your own for like every aspect of it. You might have some paralegal assistance, but there's just so much that has to get done on that day of filing. And so this was a problem that just sort of frustrated me throughout my career because I love the craft of writing. And it honestly is my favorite part of, being a lawyer. But I always felt like this just feels so, archaic in how we're getting things from, this creative process of we have, a wonderful brief or a motion or a letter to actually in the hands of the reader. There's a whole nightmare in between. And it all comes back to the citations, right? Because as a lawyer, everything we say has to be backed up by the proof, whether it's facts, you would think.
Yeah.
And that's been, hotly debated in recent news stories. But so it was years later. I'm based in Seattle now. And I had like this really formative experience doing a pro bono case where I was representing a woman in asylum court and her toddler actually as well, where we were at this final hearing. You get one shot basically, and I'd written a 50-page brief that had a lot of exhibits attached and country conditions reports and that sort of thing. And we walk in, and immediately I could tell like the judge was very hostile towards my client. And, that's a very bad sign when you get this one shot and it's all about their credibility, the witness's credibility. And so there was this moment though, where I pointed the judge to one of the exhibits to my brief, which was a therapist report. And I saw the judge read that over and change his mind. And he didn't believe my client. He didn't believe me. He believed the evidence and what he could see and read. And we won, and they were granted asylum. And it was just like an amazing moment of feeling like, wow, like we really made a difference, with the practice of law in someone's life. And so it was like a very kind of a big turning point for me. And it also happened around the same time that I was in-house counsel for a $3 billion national nonprofit that does a lot of work with providing data to courts and government agencies. And so I was learning about data science, and I actually ended up, like we talked, you were mentioning, like, how do you go from point A to point B of like starting a company? So those were a couple of those steps where then I started to think I should write something about this. I should write something about how the evidence and data science could actually help, the practice of law. And so I decided to write a law review article in my own time, which was like a insane endeavor. Like, it's even law professors, it's
Yes.
a very like horrible process. But it was actually, that was maybe like the first step towards being an entrepreneur, of just seeing like, oh, I need to do this in my own time. No one's going to tell me to do it. No one's going to show me how to do it. I have to just go out and figure out how to do it. And so I ended up getting published after it was a very entrepreneurial process to like figure out how to even get that done. The article is called Harnessing AI for Struggling Families. It was published in 2020. And that was where I also started like really learning about the different AI technologies and natural language processing technologies that were already available. And it ultimately like helped shape launching ClearBrief. And so I launched the company in 2020.
So let me pause you there, because there's a ton I just want to unpack there, because I think I'm a small firm. We litigate so we have one of our practice areas is ERISA, life insurance, and long-term disability work. It is heavily brief and exhibit laden. We litigate against some of the biggest law firms in the country. And what my friends on that side tell me is that everything they write is reviewed by 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people. They can't even write an email and send it to the client until it's been blessed by a lot of people. And I would imagine that at Paul Weiss, it was like that.
Oh yes.
And then you start to work in the Attorney General's office, and they're like, no, this is your brief with your name on it, and it's due whenever, and here's the file, and have at it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Brief writing so we believe brief writing is a creative, can be fun process. I've talked to so many, especially magistrate judges and retired federal judges who are now mediators. So they'll tell you a lot in the mediation room when you're negotiating a case. They'll tell you a lot about their past life. And what they tell me, by and large, is that lawyers write horribly. It's the most horrible part of being a federal judge is reading briefs written by lawyers, because they all follow kind of the same format. They're not very interesting marketing wise with headlines, and there's no story inside the brief. And then the bad part is oftentimes they cannot trust what the lawyer has written, even if the lawyer is citing to real cases.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I think the other point I would just like to make out of this opening is that for your law review article, you didn't wait for someone to invite you and to say, hey, Jackie, there's a neat topic over here that we'd like to assign you, right? If you were like in law school writing for the law review. You saw a problem that would be interesting to the world, and you put your thoughts out there, which is what entrepreneurs do. Like, we don't wait to be asked to lead. We lead and we provoke and we irritate and we inform, and then the world gets better. So I just want to congratulate you for that, because it doesn't sound like writing a law review article is really fun.
No. Thank you
Um,
so much for
yeah. And, it's not like writing for like a blog post where you can go back a week later and you can say, oh, well, look, people actually did read it.
Oh yeah, there's like no metrics.
Yeah.
It's out into the void. The other point, actually, what you're saying though too, is I even tried internally at where I was in-house counsel to share some of my ideas around emerging technology, and I tried to like really bring it to my day job, and they were just not interested. And so that was a pretty harsh sort of rejection that I had to just ignore, because I was like, well, they don't get it, and I know I'm early to this, but like I had to kind of keep going. So even just at those early stages, just getting used to the rejection, that's part of being an entrepreneur.
Well, and so many law firms, that of the lawyers that I work with, my son worked with at Great Legal Marketing, are formed originally because somebody's working inside another firm and they start to get these entrepreneurial ideas, either about technology or marketing, or why are we doing this? Because we've been doing it that way for 50 years is the answer. And so they start to push and hear the message that you heard, which is, we're not really interested, like, this works for us. And it's not so much that you ignore that. I mean, you don't let it get you down, but you didn't ignore it, because you then created a new path for your own life.
Yeah.
Saying to yourself, well, I've got a choice here. I can have this entrepreneurial, curious spirit and beat my head against the wall, or, there's no real book on this, but let me go take some of my ideas out into the world and see what happens. And now, at the other end of that, you have ClearBrief.ai, which is making a huge impact in the world, dinging the world, as I say. And so talk to us a little bit about that, as you started to be curious yourself, and you started to learn more about AI, and you even use language that, I'm not familiar with. Like, most lawyers aren't familiar with whatever you just said about language learning and stuff like that. We don't know any of that. We know where the start button is.
Yeah.
On software.
100%.
We use software to its full 25% potential, usually. Right? And then a lot of lawyers, they get frustrated. They go, well, this doesn't work. It's not really helping me. But you kept pushing like winners do. So talk a little bit about when you've had the idea, like, I can do something here and create a business.
Right. So I'm not an engineer. So I like the first thing obviously was to do in the startup world what they call like customer discovery. So what I did was I went and I talked to probably around like 200 people by the end of that process. Most people do customer discovery with like 15 people, but I just went to my network and asked every litigator I knew, here's some ideas I have around a product. Would you want this? Or it was more open-ended, like actually the conversations, to try to get information from them about what their pain points were. And that's when I started to like really see the patterns of like, okay, these are the things that everyone is struggling with. It wasn't just me. It really is like a universal problem. Didn't matter if they were at a small firm, a big firm, government, a judge, like they're all dealing with the same problem of they don't have the context very easily when they're reading. Often like what they're reading is just a flat PDF, and they have to go look up anything if they want to make sure that it's true. And that problem bleeds into the drafting process, the, site checking process, the sharing. So once I had that kind of conviction around like, this is a problem that needs to be solved, I started actually just doing networking with other AI product leaders. And I ended up getting connected with an engineer who helped build like the earliest prototype of ClearBrief, which wasn't a product. Like, it wasn't in Microsoft Word and you could just start using it. It was kind of like a report where if you gave us a brief and your exhibits, ClearBrief could give you a score back showing how accurate your citation was. And I remember doing this with a big law partner, was generous enough to like share his, documents. It was something that was publicly available. And ClearBrief caught the mistakes. There were mistakes, even in this big firm that had tons of associates reviewing things. ClearBrief actually was like, yeah, this you cited to the wrong page of that, that document. And the partner was just like astonished, like, wow, you're right. Wow, we did. I can't believe we made that mistake. That's, it's embarrassing. It wasn't like ruining to that
Right.
context, but it was just like an embarrassing mistake that big law and everyone wants to avoid. So that also, gave us that conviction to keep moving forward. And so I was able to sort of raise some initial startup capital from angel investors. Um, and actually got like a amazing, key advisor on board early on, Mark Britton, who founded Avo, and he's also based in the Seattle
Sure.
area.
Yeah.
So, and he was really funny. Like when we first talked and I pitched him ClearWave, he was like, the first thing he said to me before I even started talking, he was like, I don't like, everyone always wants me to like invest in legal tech. He's like, nope, I don't do it. I'm not interested. Like, I was like, okay, well, why don't you hear me out? And by the end, he was like, well, send me a deck. Like, it was like, at that point, I'd talked to enough people that I had a decent deck. It was absolutely terrible at the beginning, which is what, in the startup world is your sort of pitch of your business idea. But you just, every step of the way, you keep building and building the momentum. And I was able to raise a seed round in 2021, 3.5 million. And we had some really amazing investors all across the legal world and the startup world, including like actually Brian Gardner is one of my earliest angel investors, Court Lorenzini, who was the founding CEO of DocuSign, Microsoft's original general counsel, just a really amazing group of folks. But so then we had to build the product.
So let me
And
pause you there again.
yeah. Mhm.
Because you must have gone and done really well in law school, because that's the path to getting a job at Paul Weiss. And then you had this public service DNA, part of your DNA. Where does the entrepreneurial thing come from? Like, were your parents creators of businesses? Did you because that's not a normal path for most people who have followed whatever path they are to get to Paul Weiss. It just isn't.
Yeah, that's so funny you say that. Well, so growing up, my parents actually had furniture stores in New Jersey. It was, and my grandfather also had furniture stores, all of, so I grew up seeing how hard my parents, worked to grow those businesses and being like, nope, I want to work for the man. Like, I was like, I'm really good at school. I'll just, work for the man and be safe and secure. But maybe it is in my DNA because I definitely kind of hit that turning point where I just felt like I have so many ideas and, I'm not able to see them come to fruition unless I, really invest in myself. And yeah.
It really is amazing, because for so many people, the DNA that makes them be a good law student and a good first associate, especially going into big law, is anti-entrepreneurial, because it's all issue spotting, it's all negative, it's all the 400 things we can't, or the reasons we can't do something. And so you're that rare bird, right? You've got something in you. And now I want to ask, because your network that you eventually grew to be able to have big names who you had access to, and B, trusted you and the deck, right, with real money, is amazing. And I love you talked to, I think you said hundreds. You asked the universe. We would call it asking the universe, like, what's the biggest problem that you have with this, briefs, legal research and writing, and what would make your life perfect in this? Tell me, and you just accumulate that. So most people stop at the hard work. Like, they'll see, oh wow, this person got lucky. They raised a bunch of money and they got really lucky because they had a product. No, it was a lot of work underneath this. So how did you talk about your network and building that network of people who would actually take your call?
Yeah, that is such a good question. And actually, nobody's asked me this before. So when I was still in-house counsel and kind of like, at my day job, I had kind of like discovered LinkedIn, and I was just, I don't know, I think I was just curious about LinkedIn early. And so I started to do a lot of connection requests, and I didn't have anything in mind at the time, but I had a little bit more of a base maybe to start from than the average lawyer who doesn't pay attention maybe to LinkedIn. And so all of those people who invested, they were not like connections that I knew or had any. That was the result of me just doing. So, for example, Mark Britton, who was my early advisor and investor, and has been an amazing partner. And um, I definitely was interested in meeting him, but so I met with like three people I think before one person introduced me to the next person, and they introduced me to Mark. Um, and then actually like Brian Garner, this was like during the pandemic and everybody was at home, I think, and especially Brian Gardner has such an active schedule um, of normally just flying around the country. I don't know that he would have responded if it was normal times.
Right.
But I sent him a note and on LinkedIn and shared, the traction I had to date in the little tiny amount of space that you get when you send a connection request. And he was interested in talking more. And he also like felt this as a pain point because he's obviously extremely concerned with accuracy of legal writing. And so that was so exciting. And so every step of traction, builds on builds and builds. So I think it's just the kind of thing where, yes, um, you need a network, but like, it's not going to be like, oh yeah, I'm automatically connected with the
Well,
exact
you
people.
could do a whole seminar on this because, as you know, because you're on LinkedIn, like most of what gets passed back and forth on LinkedIn for people who don't know each other is pure trash. It's like, hey Ben, boy, I see you're a lawyer. Boy, I'd like to steal 20 minutes of your time to get on the phone to pitch you my stuff, right?
So
And I'm
generic.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's horrible.
It's
But
like
there is an
sweet,
art.
sweet.
So there's an art to building relationships, whether it's via the digital world and LinkedIn or your local community. Um, at our law firm, we do a lot, I think, in looking around at small businesses and saying, here's stuff we know, not about lawyering, but about building a business. Here's a way we could, if you want to come have lunch, you want to come, we'll have a little mastermind group or a round table. Just if you're interested, if you're a local business owner and you're interested about growing your business and talking to other local business owners about how do we get customers, clients, patients, whatever it is. And that's just a total flip from what you see mostly on LinkedIn. So you were building your relational stack, right? Here's an interview, here's a talk. Oh, wow. Can you move me up the ladder of people who might A, have money, and B, be interested in this world, the legal technology world, I guess, in its largest, widest description. And so I'm curious now, I do want to get around to what ClearBrief will do, particularly for the solo and small firm lawyers. But how did your own vision of what this might be for the legal world change, if it did, over time as you made discoveries, both in the science, I guess, of AI and also in the psychology of what it was the market might actually pay for? Hey guys, this is Ben. If you like what you've been hearing on this podcast, not just the marketing and practice building strategies, but the philosophy of the art of living your best life parts, you should know that my son Brian and I have built a tribe of like-minded lawyers who are living lives of their own design and creating tremendous value for the world within the structure of a law practice. We invite you to join us at the only membership organization for entrepreneurial lawyers that is run by two full-time practicing attorneys. Check us out at greatlegalmarketing.com. How did your own vision of what this might be for the legal world change, if it did, over time as you made discoveries, both in the science, I guess, of AI and also in the psychology of what it was the market might actually pay for?
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. So it was very organic, I think, because when we launched ClearBrief, we started by focusing on solo and small firms. That's like been kind of like the DNA of who we serve. And so, very quickly we would get substantive feedback from those users. And so I became, in the startup world, it's like the product leader. So as the product leader, it's my job to kind of filter um, the comments that I hear back because we can't serve everybody. We can't serve, every single user in the world and every single practice area. but I had a really strong like gut sense of like who we wanted to serve, which we're starting by focusing on litigators. And then I would, do as much work as I could to ensure I got qualitative feedback from our early users. And they were so generous with their time, and they really did, make a huge impact on the product, because some were like, yeah, we love this aspect, but what I'm really interested in is this. So like one real example is when I was starting, one of the things that ClearBrief does is it will kind of magically display your sources. Automatically, it displays your sources to the law. But it also, what's very unique is that it will display your factual documents. So if you're citing to, deposition of Schafer at 61, um, ClearBrief recognizes that text in your Word doc, and it prompts you. It's like, oh, is this a fact site? Um, if it is, upload your document. So then you can just upload that, and it will display the right page. It knows which page is 61, even though there's a bunch of extra stuff in that PDF and it's all, sloppy. It OCRs it, makes it text searchable, and just displays the right page. So to get to that sort of magic feeling of like, cool, wow, it's just displaying. And then the rest of your document, whenever you click on Schafer Depot at 35, you don't have to tell it again. It just knows this is page 35, displays it for you. Initially, there were like intermediate steps to get to that point where you would upload the document, and then you had to every time tell it which page to display or things like that. And hearing the feedback from the users of like, that's just too much work. Like, I'm not going to do that for every single citation. Now we have all these, shortcuts basically, that using actually underlying AI and technology that allow us to kind of figure out, oh, this is the document they probably meant. They uploaded 60 PDFs, and this is probably the one that's the Schafer Depot, and this is probably page 61. So that's the kind of thing that you need, that user feedback early on, so that you can like iterate and figure out the solution that people like, not only the solution that they want, but that they will use because it's easy enough to use.
Yes, two different things. And I'll point out to our listeners, a key sentence in that is, we knew that we could not serve everyone. And this is such a problem especially in the solo and small firm lawyer world, is that lawyers have a hard time saying no, either because, cash flow is short, or, they're afraid they're not going to get any more cases. And so they're not really clear on who they want to see walking in the door, what area of law they're really good at, where they can have the biggest impact on a client's life, even beyond the law. And without clarity on that, you mess up clarity on marketing, on your intake and sales team, and who you are actually going to accept into the practice. So that's a brave move for a company, but it's such an important company, because I'm sure for you, there were so many opportunities, because as you solicited ideas, you got tons of them across the practice area board, and you had to make decisions in order to have something that I think somebody else could tell your story. I mean, that's the important part of product, services, and lawyers. Like, okay, ClearBrief can run ads, ClearBrief can get on stages, but your biggest sales force is probably your users, who are telling their friends, this is what it does. Is that
Absolutely. Yeah. And honestly, it's funny. I was reflecting on this, I don't know, the last few weeks, of just how much personal gratitude I have to our earliest users who took a chance on us when ClearBrief was buggy. It didn't work, in the early days, like the way that we dreamt that it could. And I don't know why they had the patience. I mean, I think because it was we were solving such a big pain point for them, that they took the time. But truly, like, those are our users, are our champions. They go out, and they share the story of how it helped them. It's just really like a amazing relationship. It's almost like, I don't know, like a true friendship that I have with our users, that I just appreciate them so much for, A, taking the chance on new technology, and B, actually speaking about it, because that is actually interesting. As we've moved to serve big law, we now have some of the largest global law firms that use our product. They're very shy. Big law doesn't like to
collaborate
talk about how they do things really
No,
publicly.
they don't.
So that is hard for us as an early, tech company, where that would make such an impact for us if they would share their success story. And they'll share it internally, which is great. But that's why I just love the small solo, the mid-sized firms, the boutique firms who are, they're sharing how they're, running their business. It's
Yeah, I mean, there's just such a big philosophical difference. I mean, God bless him. The world needs big law. That's simply not us, nor the lawyers that we teach and coach, and who will say nice things about us. But it's such a different world. It's a if I let you know my secrets, the client might find out and might want to pay us less, or you might take what I've told you as my secret and then compete with us. And we're in the world, you and I think, are in the world where no, here's something cool. Let me put it out there. Let's make everybody better if we can. Those who really like the philosophy, and in your case, the capabilities of the software, and they like you and they like your team, because no matter how good ClearBrief is, it's only as good as its support team that gets on the phone and gets on the other end of emails, and your sales team and all of
100%.
that, right? There's people, and I want to talk about that in a minute. But it is a different world. So what was your lever to really be able to get traction inside of the big law space?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it was just enough like hearing about the product and hearing these success stories. And then there are, in big law, certain different like innovation leaders who their job is to kind of go out and find new products. A big shift that has happened since the, Chat GPT is that all of a sudden every major firm is getting the mandate from their executive team. Like, okay, we need to start using AI, but it has to be safe, trusted AI. And one of the major advantages that ClearBrief has is that from the earliest days of building it, remember, like I had government lawyer experience and big law experience. I knew what hurdles we were going to have to pass if we were going to be used by those users. And by the way, I didn't mention this, but we're also used by numerous courts and government agencies across the country. We're now starting to be used internationally, and there's all these compliance and security rules we need to meet. So we built ClearBrief from day one. My CTO, Jose Sauda, who was at Microsoft for like 20 years before he joined ClearBrief, we really made sure that the infrastructure was airtight, and we're SOC 2 Type 2 certified, which is to my knowledge, there's no other legal AI company that has achieved that, where you're not only really documented, extensive security controls, but you're audited on it. So that was something where big law was now all of a sudden like, okay, we need AI, but it has to be trusted and secure. They're so worried about tools like that use, Chat GPT and OpenAI software that potentially leak information back to OpenAI or, that kind of thing. So we're definitely hitting the sweet spot in big law.
So let me ask you, I want to ask you one or two more questions about the product, and then I want to really switch to leadership and CEO work. So for the solo and small firm lawyer, again, the men and women that I coach, what would you say are the biggest reasons why they should come and look at ClearBrief if they haven't looked at it yet? What will it do for their lives?
So the biggest thing that I hear with the small solo firms is that they are doing a lot of the administrative work themselves when it comes to, and there's a category of work that I'll describe as like maybe administrative work, which is like sifting through and finding which page of the documents, best supports your argument. Sort of your craft as the lawyer is knowing the story you want to tell about the facts. Actually digging through and finding that evidence, that should be
Right.
maybe like a lower level person doing that. Doing your table of authorities can take a full day for some people to do it manually on a major brief or motion. Doing your exhibits, because let's say you've written a big motion for summary judgment and you now have 25 exhibits. You have to go figure out which pages do we want to include in each exhibit. Many solo small firms don't even have paralegals that do this. And so they're writing off time, and or they're even if they are billing for that, they're missing out on the ability to actually grow their business by getting, using that time for higher value tasks. And then the other thing is winning the damn case is hugely important to your success as a solo small firm, is building your reputation. So we have a feature that instantly creates hyperlinks for you. And we hear from our users all the time, like, especially the solo small firm folks, I sent this demand letter with hyperlinks using ClearBrief, and I got a response back right away because they saw all the evidence that they would need at trial. I wasn't getting the same response when I'm attaching a bunch of PDFs, but ClearBrief has this special feature that it's all in Microsoft Word, and then you click a button and it creates a secure, almost like a private website for your demand letter. So then that insurance company or whatever can read it through and see all the evidence. Or the other hugely popular use for this is to send your brief to the judge and your motion. And it's a courtesy copy. You just send it to them. Look, if they don't if they don't want to read it, they don't, but they do. The judges love this because they, which pleading would you find more useful? The flat paper document that you have to, if you want to see the evidence, you have to go look it up, or the one where they just click and they can instantly, they don't lose their spot in reading your motion, and they can see, oh, there's the email, here's the deposition, like they can scroll. And so one of our users wrote us a testimonial. She was like, I literally won my motion because of ClearBrief. The judge never normally looks at like the deposition testimony, but I sent them the ClearBrief version, and clearly she had looked at it because she commented on it at the hearing, and we won. So that wouldn't have been possible without ClearBrief.
Yeah, I think going back to your insurance adjuster demand example, like when you're on the plaintiff side, our goal is to make the insurance claim person's job easy. Get our file off the desk by being able to evaluate it and pay it or not, but let's move it, right? We only, those of us who play in the contingent fee world only get paid when the case is resolved, or trial or settlement or whatever. And it's the same thing for judges. So it's like, how many different ways can we make it more interesting for a judge's law clerk, magistrate judge, whoever it is, right, to read what we are writing. And then to also, the big thing that you've talked about a couple of times is to trust, because, we had this incident that you and I talked about before we went live of some lawyer filed a brief, and it's written in part by ChatGPT and had fake cases in it. And my response was, lawyers have been trying to deceive judges and opposing counsel forever. Not that way exactly, but in saying that this case that I just cited actually stands for this proposition when it doesn't. When you read the case and you find out, no, it actually doesn't stand for that. And so you're helping, the product is helping.
Yeah. And can I say something about that? So we actually won Litigation Product of the Year at Legal Week, which is like the largest legal tech conference in March. And we beat out LexisNexis and Everlaw, like these massive, massive companies. ClearBrief won Litigation Product of the Year. And it was for this feature that you were kind of talking about, where this was inspired by my days at Paul Weiss, where the partner would like write a bunch of stuff in the document and then put add fact site. And I'd be like, where did you get? Is this true?
It's over there in that big box.
Yeah, like, I have no idea where to find this. Like we have, 500,000 pages. So ClearBrief's AI in Word lets you select any text, and the AI will make suggestions to specific pages that could potentially support what you're saying, that relate to that idea. And it will give it a score that measures how closely it matches what you wrote. But you can also use that for your opponent's writing. So we have the ability to drag in your opponent's brief. ClearBrief converts it into a Word document. And then you can use that add facts where they say a bunch of stuff and you're like, where does it say that in the facts? That is not true. And you can select it, and ClearBrief will show you all the, the closest matches. So we had like one of our users tell me recently that she made something for a partner called like the appendix of lies, where she, took all the statements that opposing counsel made and she hyperlinked the places in the record that said, the opposite. There's nothing more compelling than just showing, look, I'm not going to say a word. Just look at the evidence. See,
yeah. And at Ben Glass Law, we would actually title that section of the brief, the appendix of lies, if we had that. Like that's a headline. That's called writing a headline that'll make a judge go look, right? Let me switch gears a bit because we are big on leadership, on culture, on building and scaling. Give us a sense, how many people are under roof, however you define roof these days? How many employees do you have?
Yeah, so we're still very like small and scrappy. there's about, 20 of us on the team, and about half are like contractors.
That's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, I know it's crazy. Like we're up, playing in the big leagues with a very small but mighty team. And I think what's allowed us to do what we do is that every person on the team is just, a rock star, and they're, um, just really amazing contributor. And it actually, we communicate and collaborate really well. We're
So
all
let's,
fully remote too.
yeah, everyone fully wrote. So that's even more amazing. So how do you, Jackie, continue to improve yourself as leader? Because this doesn't happen by accident, and it didn't happen just because you had a great idea for a product, for sure. Because there's a lot of ways that whole thing can go wrong too. But the way you have just described your team is special. So I'm curious, do you have coach or coaches mindset or business? Are you part of any organizations that, strategic coach or EOS or anything like that, that teaches us how to be leaders?
So no, I don't have like a formal coach, but I'll tell you like two aspects of this. The first is that many of us who are litigators, we have kind of like superpowers that we can read a lot of stuff like quickly and absorb it. And, we're like our own chat GPT. We could summarize it and understand it. And so I would say that same skill set that I developed when I was writing my law review article, where I was just trying to, every time I subscribed to all these different, AI newsletters, and I followed hashtags, and I would just read all the time. And it wasn't a big deal for me because I can read quickly. I could just lodge it away. I found a method to sort of like copy and save the key information that I needed in one place. And I use that all the time today to ensure that I'm up to date on the latest, legal tech trends. I understand the biggest problems that the law firms are facing. I'm, plugged into a lot of. I'm very online, unfortunately, for like my family. But I think that's just like the true reason of like how I'm constantly like subscribing to different leadership um, publications, different startup publications, and taking away what I see as relevant to the stage we're at this moment. The second piece, though, for sure, is my advisors and investors are my sounding boards. For some of them, we have regular standing meetings. Others, I have someone who's in my orbit who can help me with like any given question. Like I'm not going to go to the same person all the time. Like they don't know about social media marketing. They don't know about like which who should we talk to at this law firm, or which LLM, which large language model should we be, which ones should we be testing and prioritizing? Like there's different people for every problem. So that's part of it, is just sort of building the relationships so that, they'll take your calls, and when they're
Yeah.
very busy people too. I forgot to mention like the founder of Clio is Jack Newton, is one of my advisors and investors. And like, he's amazing. He will, um, hop on a call, and he has so many amazing stories about his journey with starting Clio that I always find it very inspirational to like any problem that I'm dealing with. He's, got a great story about how he overcame that with Clio.
I'm friends with Clayton Mask, who's the CEO of Infusionsoft, and Clayton and I have known each other for a long time. He told me a couple of years ago. He says, Ben says, when we were very small and small office above a pizza parlor, like we had problems. He says, now with this big behemoth operation, we have problems. He says, I like today's problems better.
Yeah.
Talk to us in this last segment, Jackie, like sort of personal habits. If we followed you around for 2 weeks, what are you doing to stay physically, emotionally, spiritually, happy? Because you can go build this thing, and you've done a great job of that. But if we did that at the sacrifice of family and relationships, that would be, I think, a horrible ending, right? So what do you do to stay not just sane, because that's too typical, but to stay thriving, I guess is the right word here?
I don't know if I am like thriving. That would be maybe like dishonest to be like, this is like the healthiest I've ever been. Like, no, I am working like very, very hard. So it's not like the most relaxing like time of my life, that's for sure. But I would say some of the things that have been really helpful to me are just really treasuring my family time. I have 2 young kids. Um, and like, so this past weekend, like our family, we just did a lot of outdoor stuff. I'm based in Seattle. And so like outdoor time restores me in a way that nothing else can, like hiking, swimming. Like we just like went to a beautiful lake this weekend. And it's just like I have to just make the time to do that because it really, really helps me. We also live near like an amazing park and I go there for walks. And I always leave those walks with just like 20 new ideas. And it's just
Yes.
something about the walking that really inspires that in me. Um, and then I think just, the other thing is like having really good friends who I can trust, who are not, I have, one of my best friends, she's also at a totally unrelated startup in like a leadership role. And so she's been one of my oldest friends too. So it's just really nice to have someone you can call to like who understands the startup world but isn't like in your exact like situation, so they can give some clarity. Also like some of my oldest friends like from college and just talking to them, and they just love me so much and always give the best advice that where it's not startup advice, it's just life advice.
Yeah.
And obviously my husband and my partner is so important to like making sure that we maintain time to like go on dates and talk about something other than startups, and just that those kinds of relationships. I just feel like everything else is yes, you need to try to eat really healthy, exercise, like for sure, but to me it's like having that's emotional support that allows you to do the really hard um stuff that you have to deal with startups.
Yeah, 100%. Like having those people in your life who you can share your wins, and because you're going to have big wins. And with most of the world, if you're sharing your big win, it sounds like bragging, or they're not in the same space you are and they don't get it. But having people who can genuinely cheer for you and go, that's awesome, especially if they've watched you on this journey to get where you are. And also to have those people that you can share it, like, the mess that may be going on inside of some aspect of our businesses or our lives, that you can honestly share, without judgment, even sometimes without getting advice back, just to have someone you can lay it on is really, really important. I think the world lost a lot of that in COVID. I think, and hats off to you for running a business that's, I think you said everybody's virtual.
Yes.
I mean, that's a whole nother discussion, but a lot of people have found that challenging. It's brought out the introverts love it, and a lot of, I guess, software engineers probably love it. But a lot of businesses have found that challenging. So you've been able to pull it off. And again, that would be another hour, but that's an interesting conversation to have at some point. Like that world is just the virtual world is different. It's not a replication of the in-office world by any means, but you still have to have strong culture, I think, strong values. Like how are we evaluating people? How are we letting them come into work for us? How are we keeping them, again, my word, thriving, even they're working really hard like you. Last question. What's next? What are you all working on, do you think, that maybe would blow lawyers away? Like or even either ClearBrief specifically, Jackie, or AI for legal generally. Like in 3 to 5 years, Ben, lawyers are going to be able to do what that they can't even imagine today?
Yeah, so I mean, it's honestly a shorter horizon than that. I think most people can't imagine today that they could, you know, write something and still maintain their voice and their style, and have, a tool help them find the evidence, like use basically the evidence that they have to write something that's really grounded in the facts, grounded in the law, um, and requires sort of like a minimal amount of um, time spent, doing that initial draft, or even like doing the actual checking over of the draft, which will never go away. So that's what, Clear Briefs, our product does that right now. But we are about to, release some really exciting features related to like, our own unique take on how do you generate a starting point that's really, tailored to what that user it wants to do the most, and the evidence that they have. So that's the big announcement coming soon. Another like really cool thing that we're launching this week is one of our customers actually helped us develop this totally new approach to the table of authorities, like some things that, I know that doesn't blow people's minds, but it's just like that doesn't seem to be going away ever. So though
Right.
all these sorts of like tedious tasks that we do are going to become more like a click of a button. And instead of needing like a massive amount of time and legal staff to help you, you can really spend most of your time just on the really substantive parts of the writing process, as well as the human parts. So I think I can't reveal too much of our future roadmap, but we are definitely also seeing like already our tool allows for collaboration with your clients on the writing, if you have the kind of clients that want to do that. So those are also some of the features that we're really leaning into if you serve, more corporate clients, especially who like to, they have the data they need to share with you that will relate to the filings, and they like to, help you with the drafting piece. So thinking about how can we actually deliver and get the clients more involved in ways that would be productive.
That'll either be a big gift or a big curse.
Yeah, it just depends, like, if you want to open that door, but there's a lot of value there too, because
Sure.
when you are providing these tools to your that's a big insight that I've had too, is like these GCs, and there's very little like in terms of the tools that they use that their outside counsel also uses, and
Yeah.
they want more collaboration. So those are the lawyers that they stick with because they're really helping them. They're helping them look good to their business folks
You're
who are
making sticky points, right? Between sticky connections between the general counsel and the outside counsel, 100%. And so that's amazing. Thank you so much for this time. If people want to, maybe somebody's listening to this has never heard of ClearBrief. What website do they go to? Do you have free trial? Tell us a little bit about how someone who doesn't know, or maybe has heard but hasn't gone looking yet, can get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So they can just go to ClearBrief.com or ClearBrief.ai, depending on what you what you prefer. And you can also just email us at hello@ClearBrief.ai. And we're very much about the personalized. We hop on a call, we show you a demo, we can, use your own documents. We do offer like some period of like free usage where you can test it out, make sure it works for you. And what we see with solo and small firms, you can go to the Microsoft App Source store, just go right there and put in ClearBrief. You can download it right now from the Microsoft store, install it, and start playing around with it. And we will hop on a call with you and show you how it can really improve your practice and just take away those like really annoying tasks that stand in the way of your doing your creative writing time, your client time, your getting paid, basically. So
Yes, exactly. Getting the insurance company to send you a check in our world. Well,
exactly.
look, Jackie, this has been wonderful. You're a very busy young lady. I'll say to date and age myself, I can remember going to seminars in the 80s where the folks from WordPerfect were showing us that WordPerfect could assemble a table of contents for us if I forget exactly what the term was, but you had to go through your brief bit by bit, and lawyers sat there and we were amazed. And we would pull the little floppy disk out. It was a really big floppy disk, like not the little tiny ones. You probably never even seen it unless you've been to a museum.
Oh yeah, I was born in the 80s.
And then go jam it in. So that's it's great. I was there at the beginning of law firm technology, I guess, when we moved from actually practicing firm that we used carbon paper back in the day. To have a discussion with this you has been really amazing. So I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, and really great questions. I really appreciate the work that you're doing, and I'd love to connect with any of your listeners. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
If you like what you just heard on the Renegade Lawyer podcast, you may be a perfect fit for the great legal marketing community. Law firm owners across the country are becoming heroes to their families and icons in their communities. They've gone renegade by rejecting the status quo of the legal profession so they can deliver high-quality legal services coupled with top-notch customer service to clients who pay, stay, and refer. Learn more at greatlegalmarketing.com. That's greatlegalmarketing.com.